Yeah. I know, we're both talkers. I know, it's not just me. It's also her. It's also her. I'm sorry, we're both
I don't, okay.
And also just to make sure that you stay in the both in the screen.
Okay.
So question number one, basically is the same question. I'm just gonna ask them to you. So can you introduce yourselves? You can either present yourself or one can present the other. So as you prefer.
Okay. My name is Patty Benedict.
And my name is Bridget Williamson. I'm a co-director of the Citizen Project, and I also is a co-lead with Billy with the FACE group, and I'm also a part of the Witness to Hunger group.
And I'm actually my title has changed. I direct in the implementation of citizenship initiatives here in the state and nationally and internationally.
Okay, thank you. And so what is the situation right now in Connecticut regarding peer support and recovery and citizenship oriented practices? Can you give us a little idea of what's happening?
Well, there is a certification process that people have to go through, a training in order to be certified peer support or recovery support specialists. There's other trainings that are offered throughout the state through other venues for people going into that field. It's still at the point where I think employers are kind of working on learning how to define peer support in terms of the tasks that people do in their jobs. It's not as clear cut as in some ways that it needs to be. So it gets a little confusing, I think, still in a lot of venues. There's more peer support opportunities in the state of Connecticut now than there ever was. But again, there's definitely peer support positions lacking in a number of areas in the mental health services or substance abuse services for that matter. So, so it's growing, it's getting better, but it's not quite there yet.
And just a quick sub question, but the training that where is it given for you? Is it at Perch?
Perch does do some trainings, you know, individual, well, separate trainings, but the, what's the name of the place? Talk about the university, because you went through that.
The AU, the Unlimited.
Advocacy
Unlimited. At that time we had, I think, went to do it for 4 months, but it is held around Connecticut. So it can be one place in Middletown, it can be in New Haven, it can be in Bridgeport. So they change the site each time they finish up doing one. But it was very intense when I took that course, because they had a lot of clinical stuff that was on that, and I don't work in a clinical setting, so it was hard for me to identify a lot of stuff that was up there. But now they revamped it and made it more, to me, common sense of working with people.
Peer support oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So one after the other, can you tell us what you do on your own to promote peer support and recovery and citizenship oriented practices? Like personally, well, in your job.
Well, I'm gonna give a real short answer, and I think Bridget can speak to that even better. When I'm training people, people that aren't peers, I emphasize the value of having peer support, that it is really a complementary service Very often, case managers, clinicians see it as more of a competitive situation when in fact it's complementary. So I try to, try to make that clear when I'm working with people that don't have any experience working with people who provide peer support services.
And I basically just meet people where they're at. It can range from numbers of things. I can go to pick up people from the prison. I have been to court with people. I have sat at the table trying to get people housing. So it ranges. It depends on whatever is needed for the individual. But again, I don't do the work. I assist them with the work. But working with people, I put the ball back in their court, because the best driver to drive their car is the individual. And I don't put my will on them. It's about them.
Bridget, do you get sometimes to do conferences or presentations?
Yes, I did the presentation on the symposium last year in 2018. I sat on the panel there. Even when I went to Scotland, I did a presentation there in Scotland, and I did a presentation in Quebec with Michael Rowe.
I wasn't there at that time because, but yeah, it's true. You came to visit the whole team.
Yes.
That's great. Okay. So you talked about what you do individually. So what do you do together? How do you work together for the same thing, to promote peer support and recovery and citizenship-oriented practices?
We've done many trainings together and many presentations together. Up until recently, it was really Bridget and I that co-directed, co-facilitated the Citizens Project for about 5 or 6 years together, actually. So we've also trained people on the replication of that. We've worked together on that as well. Now it's the co-directors of that project is Bridget and another woman by the name of Pauline, because I've been moved to another position, so to speak. But we continue to work together around peer support issues, peer support trainings when we're called on to do that, and especially around citizenship. I've been given the lead of the Learning Collaborative here in Connecticut, which is working with organizations to initiate and implement different components of the Recovering Citizenship Initiative. Bridget works with me on that, me and others that are part of that. So we do a lot of work together. We've been working together for a long time. We balance one another.
Yes.
So the Citizens Project, the Pauline person, is she a peer, or is she, what does she do?
No, she actually is going to school for clinical. I forgot exactly what, I'm sorry. I'm terrible when it comes to that. To be a clinician. But she had joined the group and kind of stuck with us and became just as passionate about this project as we are. And once I was given the promotion, so to speak, to go into another position, Pauline and Bridget are now co-directors of the Citizens Project. So.
Great. And I look forward to talk to you about that when we see each other in May. Yes. Because we're doing it in Montreal too. Okay, so through this journey, what have you learned, one from the other and one with the other?
What I learned from this journey is that I can't put expectation on people. I only can have expectation on myself. And also I learned in this journey is that always put the ball back in the individual court. Like, it's their world. I just cannot save people. I learned in this field that I can't save people and I can't fix them, but I can assist them and give them tools so they can fix themselves. I can only fix and save me. I can't save nobody else.
But working with Patricia, did you learn something from her, or from how she does things? Or
can I say this to you, baby? This is one thing that I really got from Patty. Is I noticed that in any setting that we was in, if a person got a little boisterous and their voice rised it up, instead of Patty going to the level where their voice would be at, she would always talk to them with a soft voice. And I couldn't understand that. I'm like, this person is a little Iraq, hollering, and she comes in with this meek voice, and it stayed the same tone. And I noticed that the individual will be howling, and after a while, with her staying with her same tone of voice, they come right back down to where she at. And to me, that was just so paramount to see a person upset and how she brought them back down with just staying in that tone. I picked that up from her. And that's one great quality I love about Patty, is that because a person is upset, she don't get upset with them. She stays to herself and just keep that voice down. And it worked. It works. So I thought that was very, very powerful, Pat.
Thank you, Bridget.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, because I'm not the person with lived experience, at least not in terms of the people we worked with. I learned a lot from Bridget. Like I said, we balanced one another. There's times when she can see things in people, particularly what we call having game, she can see people a lot clearer than I can. She has the experience, and this is what is so important about peer support, is that very often people with lived experience will all generally have more experience than we do who don't, And Bridget has brought things to my attention over the years that I may have missed, I really may have missed if it wasn't for Bridget. She really has taught me about her community, because this isn't my community, but this is her community. So, I mean, we go down to Dunkin' Donuts every Tuesday and Thursday to get coffee and do like a supervision meeting. Do you know that when we walk in there isn't anytime we walk anyways in New Haven, this woman knows somebody or somebody knows her, This is her community. So she has taught me a lot about her community. That's not something you can learn in a book. You can read a bunch of books if you want to, but it's really not going to tell you about the culture and the environment of that community the way a person like herself can. So, I mean, I continue to learn. She's my navigator. We drive. She navigates.
Mm-hmm.
I know all some side streets in New Haven. It's because of Bridget. She's my navigator, But there's a lot of things, and all the people that have worked over the years, because I've been doing this for almost 19 years now, all the people that worked for me that were peer supporters, man, they taught me things from day one, and I continue to learn. And that's the key to me, is that this is about mutual learning. Nobody has all the answers. And how do you balance one another? And that's what Bridget and I learned how to do. And that's what Pauline and Bridget are learning how to do now. How do you balance one another? So that we meet the needs of the people we're working with, so.
That's well said, Pat.
Thank you. So we come back to this idea of complementarity. Like, it's not about replacing a job or something. It's really complementary. Okay, so it's very interesting. It was very nice answer. So we're at the question about the dimension of the SAMHSA. I know you're not necessarily familiar with the definition of, but it doesn't matter. We can maybe talk a little bit about the trauma and a little bit about peer support?
Okay. Okay.
Or maybe and combining like how peer support how peer support has to sometimes address trauma in people in order to help them, like how it's important to address the trauma. So maybe mixing the peer support, how peer support help maybe in addressing trauma.
Okay.
I don't know if you
Confused. All right. Can I talk about trauma?
Yes.
Okay. That's the one that I picked. When I think of trauma, it takes in a wide range of things. As for me, though, I'm First Nations. I'm Abenaki from Quebec. My father's from Quebec, Providence, from Odanak. For me, it takes on a very personal history. Our people, First Nation people in Canada and in the United States, have gone through hundreds of years of trauma. The most, I shouldn't say the most recent, but the one that comes to my mind, because again, it impacts myself and my family, is that my father, like many other First Nation people, was a product of the Indian boarding schools. That world stayed with him to the day he died. That trauma that he experienced in that boarding school impacted not just him and of course his siblings and my family members before him and his generation, but also it impacted us as his children. Trauma impacts every area of our life. It impacted my way of looking at the world. It definitely impacted my father's. Most importantly, though, trauma impacts the way we look at ourselves as human beings. It took me a long time to learn that because my father was one of those people that didn't talk about the boarding schools. It wasn't until Canada made apologies and the church made apologies that came about. And that was I think was the beginning of a healing process for my dad. And it wasn't the beginning of a healing process for us too, because we never understood the way that the trauma perpetuated itself through his alcoholism. I lost many, many aunts and uncles as a result of that. So the war in that sense never ended. And then of course it got passed on to my generation as well, with my own siblings. So trauma, I think, is underrated very often in the psychiatric field, and not really given the attention it should be given, and not just for First Nation people, but for all people, because I really think it's sort of like the cornerstone of what happens. I have not met a student, maybe this is a little bit of an exaggeration, but not by much. I have not met a student, for instance, in our program that didn't experience childhood trauma, especially. More recent trauma, yes, definitely as well, but childhood trauma too. And for me, as with my own people, with First Nation people, we have to go through a process of healing. And I don't see that being something that these systems really think about. You know, I think the tribes do. I think the First Nation people have, particularly in Canada, but in the United States, that doesn't happen here at all. There's no acknowledgement of the boarding schools. There's no acknowledgement of trauma, period, when it comes to Native peoples, which is really frustrating and aggravating. But even for others, you know, the conversation about healing is not there you know. And there, to me, it's always missing the mark, quite frankly. Because when my father started his healing process, but wasn't able to complete it really. I mean, he was older when all this came about. I could see changes, though. I could see changes in how he perceived, and not just the world, but himself, more importantly. So that's important to me when it comes to trauma.
Okay, and thank you. I'm curious. Did he get the chance to talk about what he experienced with other people who had the same experience? Or?
Well, a little bit. The reason why the subject came up so strikingly was because this Ojibwe man came to visit my father when they were given testimonies, when First Nation people were given testimonies, and he sat, and he hadn't seen him since he was a child, since they were in Shinwak, which is the boarding school he was in, and they started having this conversation. And a lot of things that my father had put off to, that was his fault in the boarding school, this Ojibwe man said, no, that wasn't us, that was them, we did this because. And so that started opening that door, so that peer support, that someone, like you said, that has the same experience is so important. And I know for First Nation people in Canada, that has been the process, because I think culturally we see the value of lived experience. That's just part of who we are culturally. So it's nothing unusual in Indian country in that sense. So.
Thank you. And wow. Wait, Bridget, did it made you think about some things you might want to add or on the subject of trauma and peer support? Yeah.
Yeah. I've been dealing with trauma and didn't get it addressed. So I'm still going through a lot of the dark stuff in my life. We was told that, what goes on in our house stays in our house. So, I never seen my mom work ever because she has so many kids, and I grew up in a house with no books and no food. So my trauma was I got robbed for being, a kid. At 11 years old, I had to become an adult and provide for my family because we didn't have food in the house. 10 kids, and not my mom not working. It wasn't enough. So I had to be the provider. At 11 years old, I had to feed my grandmother and my brother throughout my whole high school years. And with all my brothers and sisters dying, I shared that with you before in that interview. When my family started dying of AIDS back then, my brother Frank had died first, and then my brother Anthony had died, and then once we told my mother she lost another son, she dropped dead right then. So we had both funerals we had both caskets in the funeral. So I had never seen two bodies in a funeral ever, and that scared the mess out of me, man. I was so scared. I never went up really to see my mother and my brother in the casket because that was too much. Then after that, watching all my other siblings die, my sister Cookie, my sister Ella, my brother Jiggy, and my brother John. All of that was traumatizing to me because I'm young, and why is they, dying? I just couldn't identify none of that death. We didn't talk about people dying in our family. They was just dropping dead. So to me, as a kid, I couldn't identify that. But that's what really led me to want to become a peer mentor, because I needed to go out and try to assist somebody else that was losing family members or losing loved ones, to assist them and let them know that it's okay. it's okay for people to die, and we all today will die one day. So I had to learn that, and I want to share that with somebody else. Being a peer meant so much to me because I didn't have to wear two different hats. I didn't have to be somebody else. I don't have to come in, perch, and wear a different hat. I'm always the same. You know what I mean? So that's what really, I like being a peer. And I can bring my personal experience. I'm 56 years old, so I have 56 years of experience out here in the community. So I bring that with me and bring it to the table. So at Perch, we got a lot of academia people here with degrees. And I used to feel left out, like I didn't have a degree, but I do. I belong at the table, and I have a degree in lived experience.
Yes. And would you say that, it's just a little sub question, would you say that being a peer worker helps you in the healing of your trauma in a way?
Yes, it does, because when I think about my trauma and listen to somebody else's trauma, my trauma don't even equal up to what they're going through. And my healings come from the conversation. I think I would probably be CMAC on the full floor if I didn't be in this role, because listening, sharing, each one teach one. So, what we sharing, somebody else been through the same thing I've been through. Mm-hmm. Put it out there, we talk about it, and it's a lot of healing going on when you have that conversation. It's when you get sick when you don't talk about it, because it manifests up another way. Mm-hmm.
Wow, okay, thank you. Very interesting. Powerful, yes. There's other people here listening, and they agree. So we're at the end of the discussion. So to summarize, can you tell us what are your expectations and hopes regarding peer support and recovery and citizenship-oriented practices in Connecticut?
I would love to see peer mentor. I know I jumped it before Patty because I wanted to get this out here. I need for peer mentoring to be, or peer supporters to go into hospitals, to go into the prisons, to go into all the courthouses. I just think that if a person coming, just for example, my first time getting in trouble, I'm going into a courthouse. I don't have a clue what to do. We need people in place that could assist them. I'm not there to hear your business. I'm here to get your smooth transition where you need to go. It's important to have peer supporters in every agency that they have open. It's powerful. I like you too.
Look at her.
Do you think it will happen in the near future, or is it going this direction, or what do you think for the future?
As long as I'm alive, I'm gonna push this. I'm gonna push it as long as I'm breathing, and I got others with me to make this movement happen.
Good, thank you. Yes. I'm sure you'll succeed with your energy. Nobody can refuser comme en tout cas. Okay, no, sorry, my English is so bad. Yes, and Patricia, do you have something to?
Well, I can't top what Bridget just said, quite frankly, which is fine. But I will add to that is part of the way that peer support services can be more acceptable in all the areas that Bridget said, which I hope for as well, is for culturally for this society to start really valuing people's lived experiences. There's so much value, and I'm not saying that education is not valuable. It is, in degrees and those types of expertise, but people's lived experience, whether it be in all the areas that Bridget mentioned and in other areas as well, is very undervalued. And that's really a for me, that's really a societal change. That's really a cultural change, a perception change that needs to happen piece by piece, because that doesn't happen all at once. I'd love it to, but it doesn't. And maybe slowly but surely that is what's happening, at least in some venues. I think citizenship-oriented initiatives that we're doing helps that process, you know, replicating the Citizens Project, replicating the financial health program that Annie does, the community organizing that Billy Bromwich does, and also really seriously looking at citizenship-oriented care. We're still in the process of really defining what that means, and helping that to be implemented, not just in separate little programs, but more so broadly with clinical care and case management care, which really incorporates the ideology of the value of the reality of the value of lived experience. I mean, that's part of it. And how you work with people and how you see people is a big part of it. How you communicate, how you develop relationships. It's all around the 5 R's. I'll make that plug. Rights, roles, resources, and relationships. All of what we do, whether it be in peer support or in any of these projects, is connected to those 5 R's and how important it is for people to feel a sense of belonging, inclusion, a part of, valued as members of their community, however that is defined. But I think, you know, as with anything, societal change comes slow. Human beings, we're not too good at change unless it's our idea, and even then we're not that good at it. So it takes time, but it's slowly happening. I mean, honestly, for 19 years I've been doing the Citizens Project, and if you asked me 4 or 5 years ago if we would be doing the things we're doing today, like replicating all over the world, I'd be saying, what are you kidding? That's not going to happen, you know? So you never know. You just never know. So there's always a reason to have hope.
Okay, yes.
Well, also, I can see it in the school systems.
Right.
If we bring peers inside the school systems, you will see less bullying, less suicide, you know, for kids, because, you know, kids, you know, So I can see peer mentoring, peer support going
Many
to,
roles.
many places.
Right, many roles. Yeah.
Final word. Okay. Well, thank you. And there's other people here.
Wow.
Thank you.
No, we lost them. Okay, so we will. I don't know the next step. Like, est-ce que tu veux leur envoyer quelque chose?
We'll keep you.
Yes, we'll keep you informed of the next step, and we continue to do the same interview, but with people from all around the world. So in the end, we're gonna have like a picture of what's going on in peer support and recovery, but worldwide.
Right, that's great. Yeah.
So,
See you. Wait a few weeks.
yes.
Okay, definitely. See you, Isabel, and May. Thank you.
God bless you. Have a great one.
Merci beaucoup.
Bye.
Yes, dear.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.